You see how they've transformed it on a various things, right? From customer pricing, playing and interacting with screens on a GPT surface today is now the fundamental core of any tech company.
One of the reasons why Intercom is successful today is because they were the one who were able to capture the customer, the feedback of using the OpenAI much earlier. The best thing which Intercom did was to basically get a team back in action, which was in the founder mode, or which was founder led, to be very specific, right?
How much of confidence should the product probably have in them to say, I will collect the money from you only when I resolve a ticket for you, right? That just talks about the fundamental of how the company is also being built. Hi folks, welcome to yet another episode of Outbound with High Performer. How was your weekend, Sri?
Morning, Ramesh. It was good. It was laid back. Good to be back on a Monday morning and have this chat.
Yeah, the weather is getting great. It's getting nice and I won't say chill, but cool in the mornings. It's just a big transition, but day is still warmer.
Yeah, I was busy. I took up a project to refurbish or renovate my entire water system, the rainwater harvesting. So that took me 2 days.
But looks like
looking forward to the rain.
It's going to pour for sure. That's the forecast.
Let's see.
Yeah, what did I do? You talk about weekends just going away like that, and I still think reading from a badminton game, my shoulder is stiff. But outside of that, the thought that I was also getting is how your body is getting stiffer by the day as you age. I don't know if it's the startup the reason or the age is the reason, but we are getting more stiffer.
I think there's a lot of talks about getting younger as you get older as well. So there's a long way to go. So, get more fitter.
Fit for sure. And he's talking about rebuilding yourself from as you mature. And that's what is also happening in the SaaS space. Right? Today we're talking about how companies are reinventing themselves, rebuilding themselves. And he's very inspired by Intercom's complete. We had a long conversation over the phone over the weekend, and that he just converted that into a podcast. And I said, why not? Because a lot of things that were going right for them, a lot of things were going wrong for Intercom, but this is the chance that they took to kind of say, okay, let's get back. So 2 years of reinvention, and now they are seeing yet another wave of unprecedented growth in the world of AI when other companies are still trying to find their feet on the ground.
Correct. So I think, Ramesh, we've spoken about quite a few things, right? We've been covering a lot of topics in our pod, right? We talk about a lot of AI and how new age companies are doing it. But if you look at the whole SaaS world is going through a complete reset.
Yeah.
And this is happening after maybe 2 decades. Now, one good example of a company, a SaaS company, which basically, when we were running our, GTM discussions and all of that, and we, of course, have started using Intercom as well, right? What we realized is that, hey, the one company has basically really transitioned itself, rebuilt itself. And that's when we went back and did some research, we found something very interesting. And I think today we're going to talk about that. I think that's what Ramesh is getting into, because every company we know, large or small, if it's a SaaS company in the last, I would say 12, 18 months, they probably don't know what's going to happen in the next, let's say, 18 months. They're trying to reinvent things. But I think here is an example. We thought, it's good to talk about a company which is done, who's seeing a good, showing good light, to take it as a reference to see how things are transitioning.
Yeah.
That's the whole context, but we'll get chime in.
It started, our conversation was about, high performer and what's next and all of that. And then the conversation naturally was guided into Intercom's 5 quarter, zero net new revenue. That came right from new logos, and to their AI lifeline right now. There was a free fall in the revenues as we researched it from 2022, 5 straight quarters of $0 new ARR. And when you're building a $100 million company and then you're staring at a 5 quarter zero, it's either you shut shop, or if you're the CEO like McCabe, you are going to rethink how can you pivot this as part of the AI,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
And like today we are using Intercom in our systems, and you see how they've transformed it on a various things, right? From customer pricing,
Correct.
to signing up for outcomes, right? They are signing up for outcomes today, and that's a big area, and that's the reinvention that we're speaking of. Talking about just SaaS and the flat growth of it, right? A newspaper article today on Times of India was also talking about how SaaS companies have flattened in terms of funding, in terms of revenues growing up, in terms of consolidation, right? There's a lot that is happening, right? Larger SaaS companies are trying to buy out smaller AI companies on one end.
Correct.
Funding is dry. So this is a period that as founders, we have to look at resilience as our core. That just means have enough runway, which can probably take you there. But the most important thing from a product perspective, from a GTM perspective, how do you reinvent yourself, not thinking of it as SaaS, but pure AI right now, right? And 20 years, there's a wave that's lived 20 years, it went to its peak, and now we are seeing a downward trend of it. But obviously, this is just about time that it goes up all over again. Software companies aren't just optimizing, they're rebuilding themselves into the future of AI. From 2022 November, we've seen AI. I mean, what was just playing and interacting with screens on a GPT surface today is now the fundamental core of any tech company that you're looking at. Just not. So we'll talk about how it has actually impacting the way you think about execution, the way you think about product, the way you think about signing up for outcomes, pricing, and all of that in this part, right?
But Ramesh, if you just take a step back, right? See, this whole is a very important moment, right? Where what we're seeing now is SaaS it's been completely rewritten, right? It's done faster, leaner, and far more, in terms of very AI agentic in nature. That's how it's happening. Which means that the whole reason why SaaS existed, why it was built itself, is being relooked at, right? I think we spoke about it. SaaS products were built around processes which would optimize for resources. Right. Generally workflows, right? And that is if you look at the crux of any SaaS company or any SaaS product, it is all about implementing a specific workflow, which was done manually, was written as a workflow. Today, AI and specifically agentic approach would of course replace these, the legacy SaaS, right? And here is a good example, of a company which has taken it in stride, who have seen the downside of being a SaaS company much earlier than others. For example, I don't think we know companies which are operating at, let's say, $50 to $100 million range, had at least 5 quarters state of zero revenue, zero net new revenue.
At least it's not in public.
At least, of course, of course, not in public, but at least in the range of 100 million plus, which are renowned to be growing at a very fast pace. Seeing a net, because the reason is that the customer success as a function was the first, I would say, department in any company which started being affected by the entire AI per se. People thought that they could use agentic approach and things like that. That's how it started. I mean, that's the premises we want to start. But let me ask you this, Ramesh. See, why do you think SaaS has to evolve? What is the reason? Because this is becoming very, very important. And of course, we're going to go deeper and understand how Intercom is doing it. But fundamentally, let's spend a few minutes to talk about, hey, why is the SaaS has to evolve, or I think to replace? One of the two things is happening as we speak, right?
Correct. You spoke about, you started very well with workflows. Like SaaS was predominantly about workflows. Not many companies out there, but in the last 20 years, there's just been proliferation of software companies all around workflow model, workflow automation primarily, right? So
predominantly.
So you have ton of companies being this point solution, not necessarily vertical, not necessarily horizontal, but it could just be a point solution. So therefore, there has been a trend of definitely slowing down growth. When there's so much of competition, obviously you couldn't demand high margins. So margins are largely shrinking. And as a result, everything starts just feeling incremental. It's not like a massive change that you're bringing to an organization. SaaS was always thought about as they're built, like it's replacing a service, right? And it was always built for a world of humans with bandwidth limits, right? You always thought there was only so much bandwidth for a person. You didn't want to spend it on service, and then that was going up. So here you built a point solution that replaced it, right? So I think that's one reason why SaaS had to evolve back in the day. And we also spoke about this in our previous part of how AI is now made to think that you don't have to ration out anything anymore.
Correct.
Right? So I think that's
No,
one
but
reason.
Ramesh, as you narrated, right? I mean, this is a huge shift, right? Like what you're talking about, right? For example, we spoke about this in our previous part as well, how efficiency is kicking and all of that. Bottom line, the SaaS is moving from being a tool, right, to being a very agentic that works for us, right? That works for us, and it's not just about dashboard anymore.
No.
It is also transitioning into
Outcomes.
where you could look at outcomes, right? The
Absolutely.
best companies realize automation isn't it the end goal. It is all about outcomes, how I could make it self-serve outcome based, right? Very autonomous in nature. I mean, that is how expectations are changing.
Correct.
Right. On the other side, we're looking at, kind of rockets going up and coming back and things that is happening on parallel. There is also, agent also has reset the expectation from a customer point of view.
No, absolutely.
Right? Customer wanted to be able to see outcomes from the tools and software they're using. And that is the pain point for SaaS, right? The SaaS has to evolve into that.
It is naturally doing that, right? As we speak to our customers across the globe,
correct.
Both in you can't necessarily. There was an initiative to replace sales folks that didn't take off too well. But in the operational roles, primarily, you take a RevOps or MarkOps. Every head of RevOps is now thinking agentic.
Very true,
right? So there is definitely with AI coming in, you can run parallel tasks.
Correct.
You can run hundreds of tasks in parallel and just not wait for that one person to do one job fully, right? The thing you think about a campaign, it's now agentic and the entire workflow is done. So I think it's no more that a RevOps or a MarkOps should still take weeks in getting a campaign up and running, or even days, right? It should be done instantly. And that's one reason, again, why there has been this big transition from SaaS to AI today, right? The whole thought that, hey, you don't need so much time to get things done. Let's do it right now. Hey, is there an agent available?
Okay.
And the agent is just not solving for one problem, right? Every customer we speak to want the entire solution.
Yeah.
And it's the outcome. It's not about, okay, I'll help you run this campaign. No, you got to run 10 campaigns in parallel.
So at scale, I think you're looking at the AI tools, which is basically the replacement or the enhanced version.
Well, that's absolutely. I think that's a great segue into our next part, right? So we started about SaaS into AI.
Correct.
Drill down a further or level down. It's now from tools to AI again. Correct. Right? So it's SaaS tools to AI.
Correct.
Right. That's the big shift that we are seeing.
Correct. And Ramesh, if you look at it as a product, right? If you look at the good example, I think I'm sure that's where we're alluding into, but I think here is an example of a company which was doing the customer support platform, very successful. In fact, every startup, I would say about a decade back, would start with Intercom.
Intercom,
right? Yeah. Things went up. It became one of the most popular SaaS companies, in the CX space, no doubt about it. Very chatbot centric.
Correct.
In fact, they were also ahead of the curve when
chatbots
about ticketing. They were building chatbots, right? But still, that was still not good enough. When the AI came in, right, and chatbots became obsolete, right, because the chatbot was the first so-called feature which was deprecated because of the arrival of the true AI and now very agentic in nature workflows, right? And the chatbot was nothing but a workflows, a software, which was a configuration of workflow which automated conversation which was happening on your website. Correct? As simple as that, right? Now, given that scenario, there's no meaning. Now people can say, yeah, we know that these products would not see revenue. They had flat 5 quarters. But what came next is what is our learning, right?
Yeah.
That is very important, right? So they literally rewrote their entire product, right?
Isn't that just amazing, right? Like just to think that, oh my God, there's 100 million revenue at risk.
Correct.
And it's not going because just to rewind in our earlier avatars as employees competing against Intercom, it was always about, hey, here is our chatbot that is resolving 10% of the tickets without even employing. It was just 10%. In 3 years or 4 years, how the tide has shifted from resolving just 10% of the tickets to now 90% of the tickets.
Correct. Very, very, very nuanced point, Ramesh. In fact, that's a mind shift for us, right? So as founders, I think we should stop asking how AI can enhance your tool.
Yeah.
Right. I think it is a good learning, I would say. I think ask what happens when the tool itself becomes an agent or replaces a
The
particular
worker.
resource or a worker, right? That's a very important point, right? Because the companies that are trying to make this shift or the leap are basically changing from the software as a software, or the software as a tool to basically becoming the software as a worker, which can take
Nicely
care of
done, yeah.
like exactly what we spoke in the previous part where there are a lot of mundane stuff being done. How do you make that shift? Unless the product, unless the software which we are trying to sell doesn't make that shift, right? I think we are not really redefining things.
I love the fact that you're saying software as a worker now, where you're thinking of a resource that can do tons of jobs much faster, and now we call that an agency. So,
Correct.
see, we've spoken about, a lot of things. AI is primarily the primer that's coating every surface. But let's dive a little bit. It's just not AI
It's
as
not-
how we
it's
see
not
it
about
as AI, right? It's just not a window of a ChatGPT or any of
Correct.
those interfaces,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
But let's think about what's changed under the hood, right?
Yeah.
What are a few things that has changed under the hood because of which you see better efficacy?
Right.
What you're seeing, and that's important to know. It's when you go and say this to someone, hey, AI has changed everything. What in AI?
So I think if you just look at Intercom, right? Let's take Intercom.
Intercom.
And, let's kind of understand what are the three things they really did. I would say three big changes, right? One is speed, right? I remember when there was the ChatGPT 3.5 which was released, right? Or 2.5, at that time, it was basically I would say late 2022,
Correct.
2020,
November,
early part of 2023, Ramesh, I think we remember having a chat back then.
Correct.
But if you look at it, Intercom, right, being Intercom, even though they had a chatbot product, they made a prototype, a beta, very quickly in few weeks out in the market, which was powered by the 2.x version of, the OpenAI, right? Couple of weeks. The moment they basically had, the prototype, they could see the customer reaction very early on. So one of the reason why Intercom is successful today is because they were the one who were able to capture the customer, the feedback of using the OpenAI much earlier than everybody were thinking back then in their drawing room, trying to introduce it as a feature, trying to basically make the trade-off whether should I try to overlay that with my existing feature. But Intercom just said, hey, you know what, this is a parallel thing. Let's put it up in front.
Actually, it's a good thing if you go visit the fundamentals, right? They do have the first mover advantage in some sense.
Absolutely. In fact, they took the risk. They were agile, right? They basically had the team, right? Quickly, in fact, they had issues. They had a cut down, get to the founder mode, get a product out of the door, which was independent. And you know what? That gave an opportunity for them to see if customers were adopting, which one they were adopting. Instead of we talking in the drawing room, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, right, they already have 100 million of revenue, and that could be a risk if you change.
Correct.
So they were literally changing
But they
tires
did that
on a running car.
They did that very quickly. In fact, Ramesh, everybody wants to do that. If you go back in time, 2023 early, every SaaS company were thinking, speculating, or discussing or debating within internally to see where they would fit this open
Tell
AI.
me this, Sri,
right?
since you're talking about that, you're talking about the speed of execution, which is a virtue. It's not necessarily the key ingredient, right? Like you've got to inject speed of thought into every employee in the organization.
Correct.
But it starts with the software engineers. It starts with the product, architecture being changed.
Correct.
So how do you think they would? I'm just asking you to improvise a little bit in your answer. Would that have been an architectural change, or would they have had a separate team looking at the architecture? Now you have vibe coding platforms and you have all of that. But back day, how do you think
it's a very interesting question, Ramesh. If you take a step back, right? If you imagine Intercom, you've been there, similar size company or even larger, right? The decision making over a period of time becomes very, very hierarchical, multi-layered.
Exactly.
Right? So the best thing which Intercom did was to basically get a team back in action, which was in the founder mode, or which was founder led, to be very specific, right? And make those trade-offs quickly, right? So they had to make one decision whether should I basically make this OpenAI into a feature in the chatbot, or would I bring a new product, which was the Fin AI, which was completely powered by their AI, OpenAI, and discard their existing engine.
Correct.
And they made the call, right? They said, hey, let's do a quick experiment and see. And that worked out. and they get the feedback from the customer, using this product, right, which is completely built by OpenAI, which is based on the 2.x version of OpenAI, would have had more 10x more result than their existing engine, probably. The feedback from the customer is what is important, and they could get it very quickly. Number two, I think one is speed, like you said. The speed is about making those
correct,
quick, the trade-off, rather than speculating and becoming multi-layer hierarchical stuff, right? Second thing, very interesting thing they made, which everybody was still thinking. Even today, I know companies are still thinking about that, right? Pricing, right?
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
They moved from the per seat license to an outcome-based pricing.
You got to give it to them, right?
Right.
In a world where every SaaS company in 2022, or even now
Right.
for that matter,
Right.
is still the HubSpot is still thinking seats, Salesforce is still thinking
Correct.
seats.
So it's as simple as that, right? Number of seats, it's such a big risk.
It is a big risk.
You now only charge for tickets which are resolved. So that is an idea which was basically what was accepted by the customers as interesting as the AI itself, right? Now I can only pay when my ticket is resolved, right? Now imagine if I can only pay when my leads are verified. Imagine if I can only pay for the workflow when it actually completes
Happens.
successfully,
Yeah.
right? So that is being transparent, scalable, and it also ties up with ROI.
How much of confidence should the product probably have in them to say, I will collect the money from you only when I resolve a ticket for you? Right? That just talks about the fundamental of how the company is also being built. The conviction they have in their employees, the conviction they have in their culture, the conviction they have that this can be done.
It was not easy.
It's not easy at all. Right?
Very difficult. That's the reason I said, right, the speed would have basically made that happen because they went back to the founder-led setup.
Yeah.
Right. They had like 4 quarters of zero revenue, right, additional revenue. So that would have put a lot of pressure. But they made the decision to basically kind of take it down, trim down the team.
Yeah.
I think, we all would have seen the TechCrunch article where Intercom was cutting down by 30, 40, 50%. All that happened. And when it went back to founder-led, right, a startup mode, I think decisions are made and you are more experimental in nature, right? That's what happened.
Isn't that just amazing, right? So you see the results that are speaking for themselves. Where you talk about resolution rates, 50% resolution rate was a great metric back in the day.
Absolutely.
So now hitting, let's say, 80% of the
Correct.
resolution rate that is being done with AI agents, workflows that probably took a day or so to complete within the systems, running multiple systems, is now done in seconds. The whole economics of doing business has completely flipped now, right?
Correct.
And kudos to them. So that just brings up to the fact on the GTM. We spoke about architectural change.
Correct.
We spoke about the pricing on how they've looked at it from outbound, and then we looked at the virtue of speed of execution.
Correct.
From, let's say, from a product standpoint, right? All the three that were more important with product. But if you think about their GTM,
correct,
right? How would that have shaken up?
I think, Ramesh, it's a very, again, another aspect of this whole AI transition.
Because you can't be selling the same way that you sold seats.
Exactly. So what is equally interesting is how their GTM model evolved. For example, every SaaS company, I think, Ramesh, we've been through this as well, right? Even though we come from very strong SaaS and all of that for a decade or more. But when you look at high performer model, the model is different, right?
Yeah.
The GTM model is the things which worked in the past are not even
not applicable at all. Yeah.
Right? Those companies stopped. We stopped selling features anymore, right? In fact, they stopped selling features. In fact, if you go look at Intercom, the moment they flipped the product, they also stopped selling the way they were doing in the past. They stopped selling the features. Instead of they started selling the results and ROI. If you look at that is exactly one thing, right? If you can look at it, I think I'm sure you have some observations there. I would say that's a big shift from Intercom. The messaging, which was on the website, it moved from features to ROI.
How would the sales, like either you earlier said, hey, we have this automation set up, the sales guy picks up the call and say, hey, we can help you with your support, we'll automate your support system.
Correct.
This is the pricing, right? From there, from a basic ticketing software, you had to imagine the plight of the sales guy where he or she probably took the risk of saying, hey, you know what? You don't have to employ too many people.
Correct.
Our agents or our bots or whoever that you have over there, our software will help you resolve 80% of your tickets. Correct. No, resolve 80% of your tickets without employing 5 more people.
Yeah.
Like that's a big. The sales guy is or the salesperson there is putting themselves out there too. That's a big shift in how you're going to the market as well.
Very true. Very true. In fact, I'm sure Ramesh, they also went through. This would have also forced them to go through an R design changes, right? I'm sure
course.
they would have probably get rid of their huge RevOps teams and markups teams and ops teams across the org, right? And they need is a lean teams which understand maybe like signals, understands agents, understands customer intent, right?
Yeah.
And that would have been a massive culture shift. In fact, they would have gone back and they want to become a startup again. I think
all of this when
right?
they were probably already 500 employees, 600 employees.
Much more. I think they were 100 million plus run rate.
So that's a huge amount, right? So I think there's a lesson for all of us in this as founders who are building, who are rebuilding, who are rethinking, realigning, re-architecturing, right? So many reasons coming here. And there are a lot of lessons for us as founders as we go through this whole journey and whole story of Intercom. So there are a few takeaways.
Correct.
And you want to...
I think I would say the first one would be to rebuilding the entire workflow from scratch, which means that as a founder, as somebody building the product, don't try to layer AI over the legacy rather than you have to build it from scratch. Meaning doesn't matter whether you're 100 million or sub-million or 10 million. If you're trying to overlay, I think that is the first learning. I would say first you should basically try to build it from scratch.
Right. Okay. I think the second one is also from what the way they have probably done is think of the outcome without any limitations in your mind, right? It could be in a GTM space, it could be when you're talking to customers. I don't think we should be constrained from a salesperson to the fact of, hey, this is what our tool can do. I think with AI agents coming in, it should just be complete mind shift change to look at. Like you don't need to probably say we do CRM hygiene as one of the use cases. Do not be feature centric, right? Make it can be done real time, right? That's a big thing for the salesperson to say, yes, this can be done. There's no need for our salespeople or anyone in the GTM to say, we can help you do account research. It's not just one piece of it. It's like bringing multiple agents and you sell all of them and say, I think that's a big change from a GTM perspective.
Yeah, and also from a product point of view is that help customer measure the outcome, not the usage. Meaning, when I say usage, number of seats. That really doesn't matter anymore.
It doesn't matter anymore.
I think,
you're replacing seats. Literally.
As a mindset, I think you should look at it, hey, how do I help customers see better outcome? I think this is a good example here. One of the good examples is this number of meetings, number of customers. Things like that is what matters. I think in the world of AI and very agentic setup right now, the software will be measured by the outcome.
I think this is one point that I've also been, because you mentioned number of seats. Why aren't all companies actually changing to this strategy? Right? I think there's one fundamental reason, and happy to debate this with you, Sri, is each of these other companies, they have a layer of AI where you buy seats, you buy the basic, and you layer it with AI to ask some of your questions.
Correct.
And you make it AI, but it's not literally native AI, right? So, do you think that's a fundamental reason?
There's one thing also.
Everyone should change to.
It is also, Ramesh, one more thing, right? Intercom saw the impact of AI much earlier because even 2 years back, Intercom was trying to sell an AI chatbot thing, right? And then the moment there is an upgrade one, there's a 10x better version. They were forced because their revenue stopped coming down drastically, so they didn't have a chance to reinvent. It happened very quickly, right? But there are a lot of companies which are basically the system of record. There is the data part of it as well, right? Which basically keeps them, maybe live for some time. But over a period of time, they overlay AI, and it basically drags itself, right? But one more example is Intercom was in a layer where it was easy to rip and replace.
Yeah.
Right? Intercom was offering software which was very easy to rip and replace, and hence OpenAI was directly, threatening the business for them. And it happened because they saw 5 quarters of business, right? So these are the factors which basically fastened it. But if you ask me like, hey, do we have a choice? I don't think anybody has a choice now.
Yeah.
Right? So whether you rebuild it or whatever, however form or shape you wanted to do it, but if you cannot basically, a SaaS company has to, re-architecture itself. You cannot basically go by throttling the resources what it was trying to automate for, right? It has to basically open it up. So everyone else will keep optimizing legacy models until they become totally irrelevant. So
Absolutely,
the model has become such a big commodity, right? Having an AI feature on let's say on the ability to be able to compose your email is given. Today there are apps in the Mac which does it for you. So there are you cannot be selling products for those things. So what is the outcome? I can help the sales reps send better emails because they will get more meetings or they'll close business. That's the only thing matters anymore. Now,
Absolutely. I think with that, so the real story isn't about always AI is replacing SaaS. That's just the outer layer. That's the easiest way to communicate. But I think there are a few deeper layers inside which needs to be. It's not about SaaS rediscovering what was meant to be or leverage at scale. Right now, leverage in itself is infinite. There is no end to say what is leverage.
So then, what's the question?
How fast can you rebuild before someone else does it, right? I think that's the whole thing, and that's a gutsy, ballsy question that every.
So that's you closing with a very interesting question, Ramesh. The only question is, then maybe as founders, how fast can you rebuild before somebody maybe else does it for you, right? So that's the most important question. So let's leave that to the audience.
Let us know how fast you are thinking about building. With that. Thanks for tuning in and keep a watch out for the next one.
See you.
Bye.